If you say that, I can't put it in at all.
Okay,
Okay, wait.
thing.
Say your thing. Do your thing.
I hope you learned a lot about history today.
That's it. That's all he has to say.
All right, bye, guys.
I thought he was gonna say that he knew a guy.
Oh, no. Okay, update. That's our update. That's our motto now. Is whatever Tanner just said.
Is the new motto.
Okay. Well, welcome once again to Dorm History.
Welcome everyone.
We're gonna start off today, as per
usual.
As per usual. Well, but so I want to note it's February 14th because February 14th also is a really interesting day in history because two things happened about 60-ish years apart that are very similar.
Okay.
So in 1014, Pope Benedict the Seventh crowns Henry II Holy Roman Emperor.
Okay, big thing.
Then flash forward, now we have Pope Gregory the Seventh. He excommunicates the Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV for the first time.
So super similar, but also completely different.
So the same day in history, like about 60 years apart, one pope crowns a Holy Roman Emperor, and then another one just says, "You're done.
You're done doing it. You had your chance.
Leave the church." Anyway, just thought that was kind of an interesting.
No, that is super interesting,
and it's a great day to think about love
for all those.
For all you Valentine's fans.
For all you Valentine's, yep.
So, but with that being said, let's go and get right into the news.
Yeah, we got a big chapter today. We were talking. Me and Blake were talking earlier, and we were like, what if they just put all the most interesting parts of history in one chapter? And they actually did.
They did. They straight up did it. They were like, "You're just gonna cover this all in like a week."
And also, it's on the week that President's Day is. So there's only one class actually.
Yeah.
So
it's actually super sick.
Probably the most interesting, in my opinion, the most interesting parts of all history ever in one class. So there's a lot to go over today. I was telling Blake we talk about 3 civilizations today. I could probably cover do a 10-part episode series on each of them if I wanted to. Every single one of them.
Yeah. Well, so what we're gonna do is Michael's gonna set a timer.
Let me pull it up.
One for 10 minutes.
That's my limit because
that's the only way we're keeping this under 40 minutes.
So I just put in 10 minutes on this timer. Well, let me intro it, and then I'll set the timer when I'm in the zone. Okay.
Yeah.
So, the year is 1914.
All right.
Not when we're talking about, but that's the year. Okay. The German World War I army has just begun invading Belgium. Okay.
Cool story, by the way, if you haven't heard.
Yeah, if you haven't heard about the Schlieffen Plan and how World War I started, really, really important, really cool. I think it's interesting.
We don't talk about World War I that much. Mostly just World War II.
Yeah, I'm more of a World War I guy, but World War II is interesting as well. But yeah, we don't talk about it as much as we probably should.
Yeah. Germany was the bad guys in both wars, though. So
they did lose both wars. But the difference is, okay, this is not a World War I podcast. Let me move on. Okay, sorry. Basically, there's a general. His name's Erich Ludendorff, and he is part of the German army that's fighting against Belgium. And the Germans were just supposed to roll over Belgium. It wasn't supposed to be in close, but all of a sudden... no one had tried out a machine gun before, really. And that's the problem the Germans had.
Yeah.
Is that the Belgians were very small, very insignificant, but they did have machine guns. And no one really... kind
of a cool disadvantage to
And no one really knew about those yet. And they were like, I wonder what's going to happen. Turns out machine guns are super powerful. And they kill a lot of people really fast.
We could maybe still win. You cannot.
And so this German invasion of Belgium that was supposed to they were supposed to roll over the Belgians. They're actually getting held up until Erich von Ludendorff, the general, out of nowhere. And there's Germans dying on all sides. He doesn't know what to do. So he walks up to the Belgian fort with his sword. His sword, not a machine gun, not a gun or anything. He's carrying his sword, walks up there, somehow gets through all the hailstorm machine gun fire, and then just starts banging on the wall of the Belgian fortress with his sword. And then the Belgians are they don't really know what to do. So they kind of open it up. And then no one in there is armed or anything. So then he just holds them all at sword point and says, "Turn over the fortress."
Dang.
And the fortress gets turned over to him. And so the Germans take that Belgian fortress.
That's a crazy story. Now, my big question.
Yeah.
Are we talking about Roman machine guns today?
Dude, that's next week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but this week we're talking about something similar.
Oh, okay.
This week we're going to hit a lot of underdog stories.
Okay.
Kind of like Erich von Ludendorff, where there is no way this guy should be able to walk through all this machine gun fire, pound on the door with his sword, and then take it over. But something very similar to that is going to happen with every single one of these civilizations.
Oh, okay.
Okay? But we're going to talk about a guy. He is well, let's set the stage for us. First of all, last time we talked about this area. This is the Middle East area.
Mm-hmm.
The Assyrians were in power.
Okay.
Okay. And the Assyrians are very, very brutal. Here's a passage that describes something an Assyrian king did in 860 BC in response to a city trying to revolt. He says, "I flayed the chief of the city and draped his skin over the walls of the city. I built a pillar with his head, and I skinned many of the leaders of the cities. I cut off the hands and the feet of the rest, and I piled their heads in front of the city, and I burned their children with fire."
Sorry,
Sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing. It's not funny.
That's a crazy story. And if I could reuse a joke.
Yeah, please reuse a joke.
Well, no one else will know that this is reused.
Oh, okay.
I just exposed myself. I love that story you just told. I think it's really interesting because the king never says that they won the battle, but it's between the lines there.
Yep. If you read between the lines, they did in fact win that battle.
Won. They didn't lose. I'll tell you that much.
That's the civilization that we're kind of walking into at this moment. Okay, the Assyrians are in power. On the far outskirts of Assyria, this is our underdog story. There is born a man around 600 BC.
Jesus.
No, close.
Oh, okay.
But the Jews actually do hail him as the King of Kings.
Oh, whoa.
So
they were wrong.
Kind of similar, actually.
Incorrect.
His name is Cyrus the Great.
Oh, shout out Cyrus.
Okay. He may have been a Mede, but he could have been partly Mede, but he definitely was Persian.
Okay.
Okay. This Cyrus the Great is going to be like the George Washington of Persia.
Whoa.
Okay. This dude that's coming out of like the backwoods of nowhere is going to start taking over land.
Okay.
You like that George Washington comparison?
I like the George Washington of Persia, dude. That's sick net title. I hope someday they call me the George Washington of rap.
Oh.
I don't rap.
Yeah, I think you got a little ways to go until you get there, but you could do it. I'd rather be called the George Washington of Persia.
Okay, that's cool
Than
too.
of rap, but I mean. So George Washington of Persia, Cyrus the Great, he starts taking over land, and around 612 BC, he's probably not involved in this battle, but the people that he belonged to, the Medes and the Persians, along with the Elamites and a bunch of other areas and a bunch of other civilizations, are going to take down the capital of Assyria, which is called Nineveh.
Oh.
Okay.
Which you may recognize from the Jonah and the Great Fish VeggieTales video.
You may not from the Bible. You may recognize it from the VeggieTales version.
Dude, they have some great stories in VeggieTales.
They do, dude. I really like the one where they walk around the walls of Jericho.
That's true.
I like that
Blasting
one.
Fetty Wap.
Well, that's the modern interpretation of it.
Okay.
But there's a power vacuum now that Assyria's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so this dude he was called, like, a couple years before this, he was called the King of Anshan, which is like a little tiny village with only a few huts in it. And he, by the end of just like a decade or so, is able to conquer all the land the Assyrian Empire had. And now is called the King of Kings and the King of the Universe and the King of everything in heaven and earth. And like, if he wanted to, that title could go on for a lot longer. The Assyrians or the Persians like to do that.
Wow.
And just list off all their attributes.
If you're cool, you just get a really long name.
Yeah. King of basically everything you can think of. And even the Jews like him. The Jews portray Cyrus very, very well because he lets them go back to Jerusalem to build their temple.
Oh, okay, I see.
He does this because the Persians are known as being very, very tolerant of their cultures. Now, if we're looking at this today, they're very not tolerant of cultures.
Okay.
But compared to the people back then, compared to the Assyrians who are like flaying everyone and stuff, they're not usually about that.
We got to give them some credit, guys. Come on.
And mostly he just didn't like really give a crap about the Jews. And so like he conquers Babylon and Assyria and stuff, and the Jews are like, hey, can we go back to our homeland? He's like, get out of my ear, dude.
Shut up.
Like, go away. And they're like, okay, but like we also need to build the temple. He's like, dude, take whatever you want. Just get out of here, please.
So he's just like, he conquers place, but he just doesn't want to worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So but he lets the Jews go back to Jerusalem. And so for that, they call him Cyrus the Great, or they call him the King of Kings. That's where he gets the name from.
Okay, so he's like, it's not like he helps people, but he just leaves them alone, so they like him for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, usually he would do this military deal that he thought of where it's like, you know, we go up to the city and it's like, we could conquer your city, or like we could just not fight and you just give me the city. And like, if you didn't really agree to that, then he would like bring his army closer, and then usually you would agree to it.
Okay, because he had a big army.
Yeah, he had a big army. His army was so big, it was said that like his arrows would blot out the sun of the army. And we did some math. Like one time me and Blake did like a practice episode about just this guy's life. We did some math, and like there's probably like 5 million or so arrows that are fired a minute from this army.
Yeah, just based on the math.
Yep.
It's actually crazy.
So it's a huge army just full of archers, and Cyrus the Great is able to take over all this area. And it's called the Persian Empire, or the Achaemenid Persian Empire.
Okay.
After he dies, his son Cambyses takes power, and his son is a little bit crazy, probably mentally insane. But this is where it gets interesting, okay?
Okay, now I'm ready.
Because his son Cambyses had a brother named Bardia.
Bardia.
Okay. And Bardia, when Cyrus died, he made sure that like the empire was passed on really nicely and stuff. And you know, Cambyses is in charge, but Bardia, you get your tiny own state, and like the tribute that you get from that state doesn't have to go to Cambyses; it can just go to you. So it kind of made them both happy, right? Fast forward a little bit, there is word around that a magi has. Well, so basically, sorry, Cambyses dies, and so the next person in line is supposed to be Bardia.
Okay.
But there's a lot of rumors going around. One of the rumors is that a magi has actually killed Bardia.
Oh.
And taken power.
Which is like a wizard.
A wizard, yeah.
Okay.
Another rumor is that Cambyses was so mentally insane he just murdered his brother.
Oh.
And so the third rumor is like, no, Bardia actually, the dude on the throne actually is Bardia, and he's just doing his job like he's supposed to.
Oh.
So we don't know which of those is true. And also, it's not like today where it's like you look on TV and like there's Obama, and it's not like I'm going to confuse Obama with someone else, you know?
Yeah.
Back then, you didn't know what he looked like.
Well, there is a theory modern day that may be similar to this. Maybe a comparison. Some people think that Kanye West was either captured or killed by his record label and has been replaced by an imposter. And that's why he's acting so crazy. So, similar.
For Kanye's sake, I hope that's true.
That's true, yeah. I hope so.
Anyway, so there's this guy, he's one of the royal guards of Persia. His name is Darius. And he's dealing with these rumors they've got going on. He doesn't know if it's real Bardia or if Bardia died or if it's a magi.
Okay.
And so he decides that he's going to go and in like a Thomas Cruise-esque little like coup, basically, he goes and kills whoever's on the throne. Oh, because he thinks he's pretty sure it's Bardia, or so he says.
But he doesn't know.
I mean, in theory, there's no way he could know.
This guy's name is Darius?
Darius.
Low-key sounds like an NBA player.
Darius goes, and it's actually a really cool story because there's all like they go and they climb the tower, and then there's a bunch of like imposter magi that like have to fight him, and then he has to break his way through them, and then he gets to the very end, and it's him and his friend starts wrestling the magi who took over, and then his friend's like, just stab the magi, kill him, and Darius is like, no, I might stab you too, and he's like, just do it anyway. So he stabs him, and luckily he misses his friend and kills the magi. It's actually a super cool like story. But he writes on. He carves into a wall this entire story in 3 different languages. It's famous. It's called the Behistun inscription.
Because they did that back then.
They did that, yeah. It's like a big billboard advertisement.
I wish we did that still. Like, imagine you clutch up in like a Call of Duty game, and then like you just get like a whole wall in your room that talks about it.
Yeah. Dude, the Behistun inscription is awesome. I would look it up if you have some time.
Yeah. Hey, peep that.
Also big for biblical studies. So anyone who likes biblical studies, it was big because it's written in 3 languages. So now we can decipher the other languages it was written in.
Oh, okay. So. And also big for biblical studies if you're into my favorite verse in the Bible where it talks about peeping wizards.
Yeah, dude, there are definitely some peeping wizards in this story. But the point is Darius now kills everyone, and it's like, all right, who should be on the throne next? And Darius is like, well, I did kill the guy, so I guess it'll have to be me.
Okay, I'll do it.
And so but the part that we know is like, of course, Darius is going to be like, yeah, it was a magi that I killed. But also, like, we don't know. Like, it could have just been the actual king, and he just killed him and put him on the throne. So kind of some murky waters over there.
Sus Darius.
Anyway, meanwhile, during Darius's rule, and I'm right on time because I'm about to transition. There's 30 seconds left.
Everyone check your watch.
So I'm going to go ahead and pause this because now I'm transitioning. Meanwhile, during Darius's rule, on the very outskirts of his country, there is a place called Ionia. That's where Turkey is today. Okay? And Turkey is slowly being colonized by some people that call themselves the Hellenes. Or we call them the Greeks. Okay? And the Ionians are basically under Persian control. But Greeks they love like just revolting. They have a Greek word for it called stasis, which means just political turmoil, and they love it, dude. they just eat up political turmoil.
Thing. They're kind of like France, actually, nowadays.
And so they're like, man, we haven't had a revolt since the last time we revolted, so I guess we should probably do it.
Wait, hold up. Am I not currently revolting right now? Why didn't anyone tell me that? I guess I'm fixing to start.
And so they like revolt, except they're revolting against Persia, who's like by far the most powerful empire like in the world.
Right.
And so they go call on their friends who are actually in Greece for help. And they're like, can we help out? And everyone's like, oh, I don't know. And everyone basically says no, except for the Athenians, because Athens has a democracy.
Oh.
And so you can't, like, every other country was just like, no, we're not being stupid, and we're like not going to send people to go fight Persia. But because Athens was a bunch of idiots that could vote, they voted to send people to help because they're like, we feel bad for them. Okay. So they sent like 5 ships, which is not enough to do anything. The only thing it's enough to do is actually make Persia mad at you.
Oh, gotcha.
So they send I think they send 20 ships. And
it's like when like everyone's carrying something heavy and there's like nowhere for you to help, so you like kind of just like grab the side of it.
But also like that exact story, but if grabbing the side of it was like making the most
caused
powerful
it to
person
tip over and just fall.
And so the Ionians of course lose the revolt, like the Greeks living in Turkey,
obviously.
But now Darius is pissed off at the Athenians.
Oh.
And he actually but they're also like on the outskirts, and they're so small and so not wealthy that it doesn't really even matter to him at all. And so he has someone specifically hired that every single time he eats dinner to whisper in his ear, remember the Athenians, so you don't forget them.
It's like the most petty move on planet Earth. That's so sick.
There's 2 things. One, it's like it's kind of scary if you're Athenian, but also 2, it's like just it helps you understand how like little of a care they were to him. But like he wanted to get back at them.
Greece was just like, who cares?
Yeah.
Little did they know.
So Darius finally has some free time on his hands, starts to mount a huge invasion, and then unfortunately he dies. And the next person in line for the throne, his name is Xerxes. You may have heard Xerxes. He's the bad guy in the movie 300.
Ooh.
So you've seen that?
If you've seen
I haven't seen it.
I haven't either.
Okay. I just know it's a popular thing. Let me scroll down a little bit to where I get to my notes. Okay, yeah. So Xerxes is listening to one of his like envoys talking to him about the Greeks, because he was like, yeah, the guy before you was trying to take these guys down, so what do you want to do? And there's a really interesting quote. I don't know if it's from Xerxes or another Persian emperor, but basically someone's telling him about the Greeks, and the Persian emperor goes, who are these people and how many of them are there? Just to show you like how on the periphery of this. It's another underdog story where it's like if you were in Vegas and taking bets, like no one would even let you bet on the Greeks.
You know what it's like?
What?
It's like at the beginning of the college football season last year, if anyone remembers. Like the very beginning, people were really playing like pre-season games with like smaller schools, and I think Utah State played some school called, what was it called? It was like
Robert Morris.
Robert Morris,
like that?
And that guy, one of their receivers, did like a 360 catch in the air.
It was so sick.
And got on like Sports Center like top 10, and everyone was like, "Who the fetch is Robert Morris?" I feel like it's very similar to that. They're like,
no,
who are the Greeks?
It's that exact same vibe. So we were talking about Xerxes, okay?
Yeah.
Next guy in line after Darius, he's going to go start fighting with the Greeks. And he pulls up to a battle that's very famous. Okay, this is the Battle of Thermopylae, also known as the Hot Gates.
Yes. Both terrible names. It's the Battle of 300.
Or, yeah, the Battle of 300, I guess is how most people know about it. It's where the 300 Spartans hold off the Persians, or allegedly.
It's allegedly.
Allegedly.
But it's also no surprise that Zack Snyder didn't name his hit film Thermopylae or The Hot Gates, because those names both suck.
So Xerxes pulls up with his army, and if we had more time, we'd talk about the historian who gives us these numbers. His name is Herodotus, the father of history. But he is sometimes sketchy with his numbers. He says the Persian army numbers about 5 million people. That's for sure not true, because the biggest city at this point is 1 million people. So
you went just traveling with the largest
5
city
times the largest city in the world. But anyways, a huge army. Even if we take the low end of the numbers, a huge army. And waiting for them at Thermopylae are the Greeks defending. And it's never like a cohesive Greece. Greece is a bunch of different city-states at the time. So Athens and Sparta, and then probably Thebes are just like the most powerful ones, so we hear about them the most.
Okay.
The Spartans' job is to hold them off at these gates. There's more than 300 Spartans. They're not only Spartans. And basically, from the Persian point of view, Xerxes just goes and runs them over. Like, no questions asked.
Yeah.
Technically, more Persians do die than Greeks die, but also Xerxes just has so much of a bigger army. Like if you as Xerxes are the Persian general and you're able to take out the Greeks' most defensible position with their best troops without losing less than a half percentage point of your men, like you take that deal any day.
Right.
So the Greeks see it as a huge success for them. The Persians see it as a huge success for them.
Okay.
And it's important to look at everything from the Persian point of view as well, because I think we're just programmed to look at things from the Greek point of view, because Greece is like one of the bases for our Western civilization.
Yeah.
And as I was just talking to Blake about earlier, one of the quote from Gandhi that I love, when asked about Western civilization, he was like, I think it would be a good idea.
What a baller. Gandhi.
What a baller.
Little did you know he was dropping bars like that.
But also during the Battle of Thermopylae, you get the famous quote, Molan Labe, or come and take it, or come and take them, or having come take. However you want to translate that.
A lot of different ways you could say it. They all sound pretty cool.
Basically, it's like the Persians do their classic deal where it's like, hey, we don't have to fight. Like, you can just give us your city and like we'll be cool and let you do whatever you want pretty much. You just have to pay for us and then be part of our empire. And the Spartans' reply is come and take it, or Molan Labe.
So they're like, frick you.
Yeah, frick
We're
you,
fighting.
Basically. But here's where...
Do you know how often we rebel against our own people? You know how often we fight each other? You think we're not going to fight you?
But there's some pretty awesome battles that come up, and I wish we could spend like a long time on all of these battles. Like there's the Battle of Marathon, which is actually an Athenian victory, which is like shocking.
Right. But that's where the marathon comes from.
Where the marathon comes from, because a guy is sent back to Athens to go tell everyone, hey, we won, and so he runs super long way and then dies when he gets there.
Yes. Which is cool, because like this guy ran 26.3 miles or whatever marathons are, and then died, and we're all like,
let's do it.
Let's just start doing that like on a regular basis.
And there's also like the Battle of Plataea, the Battle of Salamis, all are Greek victories. And eventually Greece is able to expel the Persians from their territory. One of the biggest questions in history is how the Greeks were able to do this. I heard an analogy from a guy, his name's Dan Carlin, and he says the armor and the weaponry is the difference. The Persians all are archers, which is really good from far away. But if you look at how the Greeks fight, they fight in a formation called a phalanx.
Right.
Which is you have heavy armor and you have a shield in front of you and a shield on top of you, and everybody else is, so it's like a giant pin cushion that's just rolling. And so arrows aren't really going to do very good against that.
And then once you get up to archers, they aren't wearing that much.
He says, imagine it's like an NFL game, except one team doesn't get to wear pads. And he's like, how many people die in this game?
A lot.
Probably a lot. So that's one of the main theories of how the Greeks are able to defend against the Persians. The Greeks they're not going to go and conquer the Persians, but they're going to defend them for a little while. During one of these battles, there's a guy, his name is Philip, and he's watching the Thebans fight, which are one of the Greek city-states.
Okay.
And Philip is being trained by some very, very famous minds, and he's looking at the phalanx formations that the Greeks are using to destroy the Persians. He's like, I think I can do that better. He's from a place called Macedon, or Macedonia. And he goes back home. It's kind of like the rednecks of Greece, basically, is who they are. And so he goes back home and he says, I could do everything you can do except way better. And so he starts putting together his own phalanx, except it also has cavalry. Oh. And so it's way stronger. And he just goes and conquers all of Greece.
Dang. It's kind of like a dirty phalanx. Like you put a little extra
a dirty phalanx. That's a good way to put it. And he gets all his army ready, and by this time Persia, it's hundreds of years later, and Persia is much weaker than they used to be, but he wants his revenge. So he's going to go back and he's going to get him, and he has his army just all ready to go and pointed right at Persia. And then unfortunately, because he's having affairs with two different men with the same name, he gets assassinated by one of them.
Two different men, both named
Pausanias.
It's not a common name.
Pausanias.
Yeah, but he's two men he's sleeping with, both named the same thing.
And his wife is also like crazy. Probably one of the coolest women in history, in my opinion. But also crazy as can be. Yeah. She has sex with snakes. So
there you go.
But so next, after he's assassinated, the next person in line is his son, Alex, who you may know as Alexander the Great.
Yes. They didn't call him that yet.
They just called him Alex.
He's just a kid. He hadn't done anything yet.
He was 18. Alexander the Great takes his dad's killer army, the best army ever crafted in the world, and goes and just rolls over the now weakened Persian Empire.
Yeah.
And conquers it.
Which is kind of crazy because Philip did so much, but like it shows how incredible Alexander the Great was that he did so much that we kind of forget about Philip.
Yeah.
Like if Alexander the Great didn't exist, Philip would be lauded as one of the greatest leaders in history.
Totally. Philip, I mean, he's definitely vying for a spot on my top 10 generals of all time list. He's up there.
Yeah.
So big guy.
With the general from the insurance ads too.
There's one spot left and they're each they have the good case for it.
Save some time.
But when Philip is going to conquer the rest of Greece, the only one that really like puts up a good resistance is Sparta. And so Philip sends a message to them and is like, this is what he says. He says, "You are advised to submit without further delay. For if I bring my army into your land, I will destroy your farms, slay your people, and raise your city." And the Spartans send back one reply that says, "If." So that's pretty sick, I think.
Dang, dude, this battles were so much cooler back in the day. Like, we're all getting excited about rappers and stuff. Like, this is way cooler.
So for a very long time, actually, we thought that Philip kind of left the Spartans alone, and I even thought that until very recently. Within the past month, I guess historians have been on this for a little while, but it's come into kind of the common sphere that no, Philip actually just wiped out the Spartans.
Okay. He did it so good that we thought he left them alone.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
But now, so you have this huge empire Alexander the Great conquers. He never loses a battle. Conquers all the way over to India. Doesn't go into India, but talks with people there. All along the way, he's founding cities named after himself called Alexandria.
Yeah.
There's a famous one of those in Egypt that he creates. And this spread of Greek culture from Alexander the Great everywhere is called the rise of Hellenism. And so all around the Mediterranean, you get this Hellenistic culture.
Okay.
Cool. There's a lot of info about Alex and his family.
Yes.
But hopefully it made sense.
Just remember my boy Philip started all, then Alex came in, he said, "Yeet."
Yep. And I'm trying to keep my time. I got 10 seconds left. So
all right.
I'm just getting
moving on.
Close. But his empire splits after he dies, Alexander the Great, into just his top generals take control of it. So one of his generals' name is Seleucus. So you get the Seleucid Empire. And one of them is called Ptolemy. And you get the Ptolemaic Empire. And so these are going to split into either probably 4. Historians will debate 4 or 5. Some even say 3, but probably 4 different empires that are ruled by his top generals.
Okay.
And that's what the Mediterranean's looking like when we get into our next big topic, which I'm excited for.
Here we go.
This is the rise of Rome.
Bum, bum, bum. All right, everyone. Wait, no, that's not a good intro. Oh, we're just going with it. Welcome to Query Corner.
We're just going with it.
There's a lot to cover this week, so we're keep this quick. Now, I was looking at Query Corner questions, and this one was...
Whoa! Query Corner questions.
I was looking at this one, and it was tagged racism. So I was like, maybe we should check that out.
That's immediate click.
So this
They're
question...
literally clickbaiting Reddit questions for you.
It says, in 1833, Britain used 40% of its national budget to buy freedom for all slaves in the empire.
Okay.
It wasn't paid off until 2014.
Are you serious?
This means that living British citizens helped pay for the ending of slave trade with their taxes. Is this actually true or an exaggerated claim?
I've never heard of that before.
Really?
That's sick if it's true.
It is true. Just so you know, I looked up into this. The numbers are correct. The total compensation amounted to $20 million, about 40% of the government's annual budget, and roughly 5% of the UK's GDP.
Wow.
Yeah. To fund this, the British government took out a large loan from financiers. This loan was absorbed in the UK's broader national debt. Over time, the government managed this debt through standard financial practices such as restructuring, refinancing, and rolling into other forms. Essentially, basically, just like restructure, refinance, all this stuff until it was finally paid off in 2015.
Wow.
In 2015, the UK government announced that it finally redeemed the last of these consols, meaning that the final repayment on bonds tied to slavery compensation loans had been made. This is where the claim that British taxpayers have been paying off slave debt until 2015.
Wow.
So, crazy story.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Great Query Corner, man.
Thank you. Okay, so we didn't get much into Roman religion today, but obviously if you know about Roman religion, you know that they worship the planets. No, I'm just kidding. They actually just renamed the Greek gods, and now we name the planets after those. But they had a bunch of gods. Greeks had a bunch of gods. The Persians had a bunch of gods. So what is the first emergence of monotheism, and was it Christianity, or was it Jews, or was it someone else that we maybe wouldn't know about?
So that's a great question. The idea, I just want to start out by saying, in the ancient world, the idea of monotheism did not make sense to anyone.
Okay.
Like, you're crazy if you're thinking and this is why. I'll give you this analogy that I heard from a Bible scholar. He said, imagine you're moving into a new apartment, okay? And you go up to the landlord and just call him on the first day, checking him in, and you say, hey, who is in charge of, like, what water company do we use? And he says, actually, I own the water company. I'm in charge of the water company. And you're like, okay, cool, whatever. That's kind of weird. But what electricity company do we use? And he's like, I actually own the electricity company. I do that as well. You're like, okay, sick. But, like, so who collects our trash, just so I know, like, when to put out the trash? And he's like, well, I own a garbage truck, and, like, I just go around and I do the trash too. And you're like, okay, shoot. Well, like, do we have, like, a cleaning service or anything? He's like, no, I just personally come in and I will, like, clean your apartment for you. That sounds crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's what it would sound like if you were talk to an ancient person and we're like, yeah, there's just one God that does everything.
Oh, they're like, he does the rain?
Like, he does the rain
and the sun?
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay. Like, let's hold our horses.
Chill out, dude.
And so that's why, like, Judaism, like, the Jews believing in just one God was so radical because it didn't make sense to anyone else. And for the record, Jews didn't believe there was only one God. They believed there was lots of gods, but there was one God that did everything.
Oh, okay.
And the other gods weren't worthy of your worship. They didn't really do anything.
Which is why you get Bible stories where, like, Abraham's like, my God versus your God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Abraham believes the other God exists, but he's just like, your God's not going to do anything. He sucks compared to my God.
My God's way cool.
Yeah.
And it's why they call it the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac.
Yep. And so the Persians also have a somewhat monotheistic religion that probably you could argue Judaism is the first monotheistic religion because it's probably the oldest religion. You could also argue that Zoroastrianism, the Persian religion, is the first monotheistic religion. You could also argue that Christianity is the first monotheistic religion because in Christianity, you officially say there are no other gods that exist.
So they're the first ones to be bold enough to be like, we're right, you're wrong.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's also one of the reasons, like, they were hated so much because, like, if you're conquered by the Romans pre-Christianity and you have different gods, they can just be like, well, yeah, like, keep worshiping your gods, but just also worship our gods too. Okay. But, like, if you said it to a Christian, they're like, no, we're just going to worship our God.
Oh, okay. Right. And they're like, all right, buddy. Yeah. Okay. So. Interesting. Good to know.
Yep.
Well, 2 questions this week in case you were counting. Maybe all the numbers of questions add up to something. Maybe there's a pattern. With that, we'll send you back to the podcast.
So according to myth, you may know this.
Yes.
There's people called Romulus and Remus.
Yeah, shout out those guys for single-handedly or double-handedly
being raised by wolves.
Being raised by wolves and then creating the greatest empire ever.
Right.
Imagine doing both in one lifetime.
But realistically, and according to legend, Romulus is also the first king of Rome.
Right.
And so Rome has 7 kings, and they're supposed to have exiled their last king, which was named King Superbus. Can you believe that?
Yo, what? How have I never heard of that before? He was King Superbus?
Well, it's just like, you usually just say King Superbus, but I had to say Superbus just to, like, let you know.
Still, Superbus. That's sick. By the way, if you ever have said the word bussin' in your life, but have not looked up the definition of bus, like B-U-S-S to bussin', you should look it up right now because it is actually the funniest thing ever.
It will change your life, probably.
It will.
Hold on, let me reset my timer real quick.
No, you're good. You're good.
We have the Superbus is exiled as their last king because actually he raped one of the religious virgins or whatever. Oh. And that's bad news. So they had to send him out of there. And Rome is going to create the first bits of a republican government.
Okay.
Which is a government based on representation, has a lot of laws. You have a lot of different offices, which is different than Greece. Greece, everyone just kind of voted on stuff. But Rome has a lot of laws and voting districts and offices and all sorts of complicated stuff.
They're getting fancy with it.
Right. So to make this more simple for you, this is important to understand to make the rest of the story I'm about to tell you make sense. There's 3 important positions in the government, in the Roman government, that I want to talk about. One is called a consul. Do you know what a consul is?
Yeah, PS5, Xbox.
Yep. Then we'll move on. Next one. A consul is like a president.
Okay.
Except the Romans are terrified of having too much power in the hands of one individual, so they have
Mhm.
2 consuls
Dos.
instead of 1. Another office is called you can be a senator.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you become a senator by just being in a very aristocratic and noble family.
Yeah.
You occasionally can rise through the ranks and become elected a senator. It's not likely, but it does happen.
A little harder.
There's a famous Roman named Cicero. He's one of those kinds of people. And then the last office that's important is called the tribune of the plebs.
My favorite.
Okay, the tribune of the plebs is supposed to be a representative for the plebeians or the plebs or the lower classes, the less fortunate people.
Yeah.
And so if the government's doing anything that is going to hurt the lower classes or going to oppress them too much, the tribune of the plebs, basically the only thing he can do is he can veto it. Say, no, you can't do it.
Right.
Cool. Makes sense?
Yeah.
And if you didn't get all those, I would go back and re-listen to that segment because that's going to be very crucial for what I'm going to talk about coming up here.
Understanding the consul, senate, and the tribune.
Mm-hmm. About 300 years after Rome creates its republican government, everything's going well, there's a guy's name is Tiberius Gracchus. Okay? Tiberius comes from a very noble family, a very blue-blooded family. So what you do, I mean, his dad had been a consul, like his whole family was full of senators.
Mm-hmm.
So what you do is you become a senator or a consul too, right? That's very, very glorious, very great thing to do.
Similar to our personal friend John Kennedy.
Right. I mean,
not the one you're thinking of.
Let's get his dad on the phone. But Tiberius breaks the mold, and instead he goes for the position tribune of the plebs.
Okay.
It's debated why he does this. I could tell you a million explanations, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
But Tiberius goes for this office. He wins it. And all the poor people, all the plebeians who he's supposed to represent, they're starving. They could use some more food.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, I got this idea. Goes back into the ancient law books of Rome and finds a law that says, if you're a tribune of the plebs, you can actually write up a law. And instead of going to tell the Senate about it and the consul about it, you can just take it to the plebeians and have them vote on it and see if they want to do it.
Oh.
And so his bill is basically all the poor people get like free food. And he's like, all right, poor people, do you want this?
And they're like, yeah.
They're like, for sure we want that.
Dang. So he like Hermione Grangered that shiz.
What does that mean?
Well, like in Harry Potter, she's always just like,
Look, I found a rule that says that we get to go sledding.
And then they go and do it.
Yep.
That's basically
Except
how the books work.
This would have ended up worse for Hermione if she was in Rome though, because he actually gets lynched.
Oh.
So.
Hermione getting lynched would be actually make this story probably a lot cooler.
So it didn't end up good for Tiberius Gracchus, because the Senate had all the Romans were fearing him having too much power in his hands. They go lynch him
because this random plebeian is just making laws.
He's not a plebeian actually. He's a blue-blooded guy, but he's supposed to represent the plebeians.
But he's
the tribune of the plebs, right? So then he has a younger brother, and his younger brother is one of the greatest speakers the earth has ever known. His name is Caius Gracchus. And Caius is like, well, I'm just going to do everything my brother did, except I'm going to get some bodyguards so I don't just get killed.
Learn from others' mistakes. Lesson this week.
And so he goes and does the same things, gives all the poor people free food and stuff, and he's like, we'll do all sorts of colonies, we'll do all sorts of great stuff. His story is fascinating. I could tell you a lot more. Gets exiled, comes back. But after he promises all the poor people this stuff, then he also gets lynched too, even though he had bodyguards.
Right. Keeps happening.
So it's not working so well, but the lower classes are kind of upset about it.
Right.
There's starting to be a little bit of boiling under the surface in Rome.
They're not dumb. They're like, hold on a second.
Something's going on here. Then there's a couple battles they've been fighting. Some a while ago. I wish we could spend a whole episode on the Punic Wars. This is where they fight the Lord of the Mediterranean, basically Carthage.
Okay.
Is what they're called. Carthage is the most powerful empire probably in the world at this point. Their capital is in northern Africa, where Tunisia is today. And they're fighting against Rome in these 3 separate wars. They almost defeat Rome when their famous general Hannibal, who's maybe the most famous general, or maybe the best general of all time, up there.
Really?
In the top 5. He crosses the Alps with his army of elephants, and then just starts ransacking Rome.
Which is sick, by the way.
Yeah,
like,
if you didn't pick that up.
If you can say, I crossed the Alps with my army of elephants, like, that's already cool. And then you're like, I also ransacked Rome right after doing that whole thing.
But the wars just don't go his way, and eventually Rome wins, which pushes them into the position now officially of superpower. So they are the most powerful country in the world at this point.
Okay.
After they defeat Carthage. It's kind of like the United States before and after all the world wars.
Right.
Right. One of the generals that helps kind of clean up things a little bit after Carthage and also helps defeat some invaders up north His name is Gaius Marius.
Okay.
Gaius Marius is a great general. He becomes consul 7 times.
Wow.
Which, like, you were not supposed to do that. In
No,
case
you're
you're
supposed to do it once, right?
You're supposed to do it one time.
He said,
So he does it every time.
I promise this is the last one, guys.
He gets to the point where, like, and it's because there's so many invaders and he's just the best general there is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, all right, people are attacking us. Do you want to die? No? All right, let's get Marius. And so it gets to the point where the common, like, prayer in every household is like, we'll pray to the gods and to Marius.
Whoa.
So he's a big deal. Marius becomes, he notices a problem. In Rome, you can only be in the army if you own land.
Oh.
And there's becoming less and less landowners in Rome, and they need a bigger and bigger army.
Okay.
So this is his solution to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you know what, I'm just going to hire you to my army even if you don't have land. And then if we win, I'll give you some of the land that we took, and now you have land, and now it's cool.
Right.
Okay. The unintended side effect of this is now all of Marius's troops are more loyal to Marius than Rome.
Oh, because he's getting them land.
Because he's the one getting them land, right?
Right.
So, like, if Marius is like, let's do this thing, and Rome is like, let's do this thing, like, I'm going to do what Marius says because I want my land.
Right.
I want to keep my
If I go
family
fight where
alive.
Marius says I should fight, then I'm going to get land there.
Right. So, unintended consequence, all of the Roman generals now have, like, their own personal armies.
Oh.
They're loyal to them.
Uh-oh.
So I'm
sure this will never lead to anything bad happening.
Marius makes friends with a tribune of the plebs.
Oh.
And his tribune of the plebs starts doing all the other stuff that the other tribunes were doing that no one likes, where it's like, here's some free food and stuff.
Right,
and here's
okay.
citizenship even if you're poor, and no one likes that. And so there's a guy, he's an aristocrat. He actually used to be one of Marius's sub-commanders. His name is Sulla.
Sulla.
And so he's like, well, you know, Marius is getting kind of old. Old head, and I've got my own army now.
Oh.
So he goes and just takes over Rome and basically kicks Marius out and says,
Oh.
okay, no more of this silly tribune stuff.
Mm.
We're done with that.
I'm in charge.
But he also starts something called prescriptions,
Oh.
which is basically anyone, and because he's an army, he can go just walk into Rome, right? So he also proclaims himself dictator. So now Sulla is a dictator of Rome. He's doing this thing called prescriptions, where if you write your name on this list, anyone can just kill you if they want. And if they bring your head to Sulla, then he gives you money. He gives them money.
Wow.
So
It's like Jonathan Wick.
yeah, it's like that.
If you've ever seen.
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
But I know the premise.
Yeah, and Jonathan Wick, they do the same thing.
Yep. And so Sulla is the first dictator of Rome. He tries to go fix everything, tries to make it illegal to do that tribune thing where you just do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then he retires. He gives power back to the Republic, which is actually a really admirable thing to do.
Become dictator and then be like, just kidding.
Fixed it enough.
Gotcha.
When Sulla was killing people, all the people he was killing, writing down on the list, were all the people that were going to do the tribune stuff.
Mm.
We're gonna try to give all the poor people free stuff.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
He said, well, you got to stop that.
Mm-hmm. So he just killed all of them. And there was... basically, he killed pretty much every single politician that wanted to do that. But there was one politician, all his people were like, please don't kill this guy. Like, we really like this guy. Plus, he's just, like, young. He's only 18 to 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Like, leave him alive. Like, everything will be okay. And so finally is like, you know what? Okay, but I'm warning you, bad things are going to happen if we leave this guy alive. That guy, his name was Julius Caesar.
Oh.
So if you've heard anything about Julius Caesar,
Yes.
He's named after the hotel in Las Vegas.
Yes. And the pizza place.
He's named after those. Yeah, they're not named after him.
And the salad.
He's named after those. Yeah.
Dude, actually, that's crazy. I didn't even think about that. He's such a cool guy that he has brand deals after being dead. He's bigger than the Flintstones gummies.
Bet you didn't realize that about him.
You didn't realize he's bigger than the Flintstones, because the Flintstones has been off air for like 50 years or so. I don't know, probably less than that.
I don't know how long they've been off air
But
for.
they still make Flintstone gummies. But
Mhm.
Caesar's been dead for
like 2,000 years.
2,000 years. And they're still making Caesar's pizza, Caesar's salad, Caesar's
Everything.
casino.
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
Caesar is a lowly guy, but he's also the only one really left in his political party.
Mm.
So his ideas are becoming very radical.
Oh.
And so he goes and he does something that some people call the Celtic Holocaust.
Oh.
Hopefully you can pick up what that is. It probably wasn't a genocide or a Holocaust, but if we're arguing right around that line.
Oh, okay.
You know? It's pretty close.
I'm not for it. I'm not against it. Yeah, we'll just see what happens.
But Caesar is also, I mean, in my opinion, maybe the greatest human to ever walk this earth in terms of just raw talent.
Right.
Like, very, very political savvy. One of the greatest speakers ever. One of the greatest writers ever. He could dictate as many as 7 letters to people around him at the same time while writing separate letters with each hand.
Whoa.
So
you basically, like, this guy was just, like, a genius and then also, like, really buff and handsome and, like, talked really well, too.
Yeah, uh-huh.
So he's, like, really smart, but he also wasn't, like, special needs.
Was always having affairs with everybody, too.
Oh, okay, sick.
There's one time in the Senate when he's, like, his arch rival, Cato, is giving a speech. And Cato has all these things to say, and he's just yelling and screaming at the pulpit. And then all of a sudden, Caesar gets, like, a secret note delivered to him.
Mm-hmm.
And Cato's like, Caesar, what are you doing? And Caesar's like, I just got this note. Don't worry about it. And Cato's like, no, why don't you share it with the class? Basically. And it's a love letter to Caesar from Cato's sister.
Dude, that had to be planned. He had to plan that. There's no way that just happened. That's so sick.
Caesar is able to ally himself with the most rich person in Rome named Crassus and the most powerful person in Rome named Pompey, and create what's called the First Triumvirate, which is basically a conspiracy.
Okay.
Where they're going to, like, help each other get whatever they want. Caesar does this thing in Gaul, which is modern-day France, kills a bunch of people, conquers it for Rome, adds it to the Roman Empire. Back in Rome, Cato, who's his arch rival, the dude whose sister he's having an affair with.
Right.
As soon as Caesar comes back into Rome, Caesar is going to, like, get basically put in jail by Cato because he has a bunch of charges he can run him up on.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And so Caesar says, you know what Sulla did, where he just, like, marched his army into Rome and took it over and became dictator? Like, I think I'm going to do that, except I'm not going to give up power at the end. I'm just going to keep it.
He basically had, like, a realization of free will moment. I can do whatever I want.
And so famously, he crosses the Rubicon River into Italy and says, the die is cast. And he takes over Rome and becomes the first Roman emperor, which means dictator for life.
Dang.
So there you have Julius Caesar.
So cool, dude.
So such a cool guy.
I've always thought Caesar was pretty cool, but ever since living with Michael and him just telling me, like, he'll randomly get home because he knows I love Caesar. He'll be like, I just found out this new story about something crazy Caesar said or did, and I just love him more every time. It's just crazy.
I could legitimately do, like, an hour episode just on Caesar.
I know.
Easily.
We should at some point. Maybe at the end of the semester we'll start doing, like, Caesar episodes.
When Christensen does his Book of Mormon lecture, we'll just give Caesar lecture.
Give a Caesar lecture. Two most important things.
After 4 years of ruling, Caesar is assassinated. You get the famous line, "Et tu, Brute," means "and you, Brutus," because Brutus was maybe his illegitimate son.
And yet
he murdered him.
Yeah. Tough break.
So, yeah. And there's so much in the story we're skipping over, by the way. Like, if you were hoping to hear some Cleopatra stuff, he does have an affair with her. Yeah. Has a kid with her. Like, there's
That's
lots
how crazy his life is we just skipped where he, like, had an affair with one of the most powerful female rulers in the history of the world.
We also skipped over, like, things with Caesar. We skipped over a pirate story that's really interesting. So, like, there's tons of stuff about it. We'll get back to it. But his adopted nephew takes power next. His name is Octavian. Octavian renames himself Augustus, which means the venerable. So if you've ever heard Caesar Augustus, this is who we're talking about.
Okay.
Augustus starts something called the Pax Romana, or the Roman peace, where basically there's peace in Rome for 200 years. So if you want to live at a point in Rome, this is where you probably want to live.
Okay. It's just lit.
It's just lit there. Art's going on.
Roads, really good roads.
They're big on roads.
Cool cement.
Because their soldiers are, like, half construction worker, half soldier. And so they, like...
It's kind of a lit hybrid.
Stuff. Yeah.
Which sucks because nowadays every construction worker I see is just really fat.
Time...
No offense to any construction workers out there.
One time when Caesar's in Gaul and going to conquer a Celtic village, he... there's this big river that, like, no one can cross, and they think they're safe on that side, so all the Celts flee over there. And so Caesar, like, doesn't even just, like, get boats to cross it. He, like, builds an entire bridge across it and then goes and conquers the city and then goes back over the bridge and then burns it down and says, like, hey, we could have left the bridge up, but we burned it down. We just want to let you know that we can build a bridge whenever we want.
We don't care.
We don't care.
Dude, it's like a Fortnite back in the day. You shoot someone, they just turn into a 5-star hotel. That's sick.
After, I'm going to breeze through the rest of the Roman emperors just because... they're very important, but just for the sake of time, I'll highlight a couple. In 285 AD, Emperor Diocletian rules, and what he does is he splits the empire in half. Okay, so now you have Western Rome and Eastern Rome, And because the capital of Eastern Rome is not Rome anymore, we're going to give it a new capital and a new name. The new capital is Byzantium, which is an old Greek city.
Mm-hmm. And also sounds like a element they'd make up for a Marvel movie.
It does sound like that. Byzantium is the capital of the eastern half, and now Rome is the capital of the western half. Rome gets reunited and broken apart and reunited a bunch of times, but basically it's going to split like that. The people who lived in the eastern half, they called themselves Romans. They believed they're Romans, but just for the sake of history, so it makes more sense to us, we say it's the Byzantine Empire. Okay? The next emperor that I'm going to highlight, probably the last emperor I'm going to highlight, and I'll highlight two more. This guy and one more.
Okay.
This guy's name is Constantine. Constantine the Great. Constantine moves the capital, official capital of the entire empire, because at this point it's combined. It combines and collapses a lot. Don't worry about it. But he moves the official capital from Rome to Byzantium and renames it after himself. Renames it Constantinople.
Which you may recognize from Constantinople.
The song.
Yes.
And if you can't find it on a map, don't worry. It's called Istanbul today. Constantinople is going to last for another 1,100 years. Okay. So technically the Roman Empire goes from about 700 BC to 1452 AD.
Jeez, calm down.
So over 2,000 years.
Holy cow.
One of the main things you need to know about Constantine is, if you've noticed, we're now in the ADs, which means Christ has lived and died since then. Constantine is about to fight a big battle one time, and he has a dream, and in the dream, Jesus comes to him and says, if you paint a cross on all your soldiers' shields, you'll win the battle. And he does it, and he wins the battle. And so he starts to tolerate Christianity. So now in Rome, you can be Christian. It's not officially the state religion until 32 years later in 338. 380, sorry. 338 is different.
Which don't some historians theorize that he really didn't have that dream and he was just doing that to unite his empire under one religion?
A lot of historians do think that,
okay.
Yeah. But I mean, you can never tell if he had the dream or not, you know what I mean?
You did not have that. Shut up.
So he tolerates Christianity. He is baptized right before he dies. And then the last emperor of Rome in 476, last emperor of Western Rome, I should say, because Eastern Rome is going to exist for a long time. The last emperor of Western Rome, his name is Romulus, just like the first emperor.
Oh.
How fitting.
Classic.
Right?
It's like they knew.
Right. Rome is attacked by a bunch of barbarians from the north, including the Huns from Mulan, and a couple other people. And Rome is going to fall in 476 AD.
Dang.
I'm going to backtrack, and I want to add one thing really quick, and then we'll just be done with it. I do want to talk about the Persian religion really quick that I skipped over.
Yeah.
The Persian religion is called Zoroastrianism, founded by a dude named Zoroaster, which is a sick name.
Zoroaster. Dude, that sounds like some Silicon Valley startup that makes a smart toaster.
Zoroaster may have existed. This is one of the craziest things about Zoroaster. We have two times that he could have lived, and they're very far apart. Either 600 BC or 2000 BC.
Oh.
So we don't know where he was in that.
Just a little bit of a range there. No big deal.
And not like anywhere in between that. It's not like somewhere between, like either
really?
Is that or
it's
that.
It's either this or that.
Yep.
Oh, wow, that's crazy. All right.
But the point of the religion, they have one main god, Ahura Mazda. This is a big deal because depending on how you look at Judaism, this may be the first monotheistic religion ever to exist.
Oh, okay.
Also is famous for its dualism, which means they have a god and a devil.
Oh, okay.
Christianity is, I could get into theological weeds. Christianity is not technically this same kind of dualist, but Christianity probably gets their idea of Satan and maybe even their idea of the last days, like the apocalypse, from Zoroastrianism.
Interesting.
So that's the Persian religion. They don't enforce it. Like I was saying, they're very lenient. They kind of let you do what you want, but that's what Cyrus and Darius and Xerxes and Cambyses are going to believe. Even the Magi, probably.
Shout out peeping wizards.
Yep, even the peeping wizard. And then also, just side note to this, everyone at this point is doing slavery. I'm not that interested in like slavery history, so I don't include a lot of it, but slavery's going on every single country everywhere.
If you're wondering if they were doing slavery and it was before the 1700s,
yes.
Answer's probably yes.
There's a famous guy named Spartacus, you may know, leads a slave revolt in Rome. If we had more time, we'd hit on that too.
Yeah. We'll have to do it all in a different episode, but
yep.
we appreciate you guys, as always, our tens of loyal fans, for checking out the podcast this week once again and hearing all about Rome and the history of it. Yep. So with that, we're going to leave you back to your regular life. Yes. So get out there, go kiss women or kiss men or whatever you prefer to do.
This won't come out for another week, but...
Well, but I'm just saying, just trying to encourage people.
Yeah, you can. You can. It's like Casey Musgrave says. Okay. Kiss lots of boys, or was it kiss lots of boys or kiss lots of girls if that's something you're into.
Yeah. Do whatever you want, man.
Yep.
And so with that, we'll leave you with our outro music as always. Bing, 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 bing. Okay. All right.